Can't see the second hand. Tick, 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 tick. Oh, there it is. Okay. It did change.
She's 17.
Mm-hmm.
Back to here. Appreciate it.
By the authority vested in me, I hereby declare this meeting of the Conshohocken Borough Council duly open and ready to conduct any business that may come before it. Ms. Checo, if you could do roll call, please.
Yes, we'll note for the record that Councilmember Totino is absent. Councilmember Serna.
Present.
Councilmember Kingsley.
Present.
Councilmember Barton.
Here.
Councilmember Elam.
Present.
Vice President Sokolowski.
Here.
President Leonard.
Here.
Mayor Aronson.
Here.
Thank you.
Could everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prior to the meeting, Borough Council held an executive session on property acquisition and legal matters. The first item on the agenda under presentations is the swearing in of Animal Control Officer. Mayor Aronson, if you could come up, please, so we could swear in Mr. Dwight Batzel.
I, Dwight Batzel,
I, Dwight Batzel,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support and defend and obey
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties
and I will discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
The next item on the agenda is conduct interviews for board and commission vacancies. The first item is an interview with Bob Maloney for the EAC. Mr. Maloney, if you could come up, please.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for coming in this evening.
Thank you for your consideration.
You're welcome. Does anyone on council have a question to start off?
Mr. Maloney, why do you want to serve on the Planning Commission, or the EAC?
Well, it's pretty easy. I've lived in this community for over 40 years now, and I believe that it's about time that I did something meaningful to contribute and give back to the community. I've got a vested interest in the community that it thrives, and I believe that there's a huge opportunity with the growth that we're expecting to be able to make a contribution regarding the environment, and I think that this is a good way to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you see anything as a priority for the EIC?
I believe it has to do with water conservation and recycling, as well as energy conservation.
Bob, can you talk about some of the meetings and events that you've been to for the EAC?
Well, that's actually a great question. So I've attended a number of meetings with the EAC, and frankly, I'm impressed with the expertise and the level of commitment from the group. I've learned a lot from those folks, and the things that they've been involved with, well, whether it was the lanternfly infestation, the cleanup and recycling, as well as energy conservation.
Thank you.
Is there anything from your professional background that you think would help you in terms of working on the EAC?
Well, my professional background actually is not relative to conservation, but I've learned over time to take a great interest in science. I have an interest in making sure that we do something about the climate change, and I'm a lifelong learner. I do bring a long background of leadership, business, and life experience to the table, and I hope to learn from the group as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else on council have any questions for Mr. Maloney? No? Thank you, Bob. Thank you for coming in this
Thank you.
evening. It was good seeing you again. The next person for interview for the Planning Commission is Mr. Michael Lanazza. Good evening. I'm sorry if I did not say that correctly. You can feel free to correct me.
That was perfect, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in. And why do you want to serve as a member of the Planning Commission?
How much time do I have?
We like your enthusiasm. Go for
Yes.
it.
So, maybe I'll also be efficient and head off some of the questions. So my background is I'm a degreed engineer from Drexel University. I've lived in the area. I lived here from 2007 to 2011. I worked at Jacobs Engineering. I worked at GSK. I moved back in 2019. I live at the Glassworks community on Hector Street. My wife's parents live at the Grand. I lived at the Grand. And I think, so I went through the 10-year plan, and there was one graphic in there that I really liked, was reflecting on the past, assessing the present, and planning for the future. That's been my recipe for success. And I think Conshohocken, what we should be doing is, this should be a best place to live. Preparing for this meeting, I went on, looked at the cities that are along rivers. Why aren't we on that list? We have a beautiful river right here, and we can develop it. I looked at the 10-year plan, and there's elements in there related to sustainability and responsible planning. Are there I don't know, but are there metrics related? We're 4 years into that plan. Are there metrics on that plan on how we're doing? The other thing, there was key accomplishments and goals that you wanted to reach. How are we doing that? And in my opinion, the way to do that is we need to get economic development, but we need to have a reason for people to come here. This is a great destination. We have outstanding transportation with the interstates. We have the Schuylkill Trail. We have 2 public transportation stations. And we can make this a boutique area. We can go after Ardmore and go after some of the stores. We can compete with King of Prussia, and we can bring in different businesses to increase the tax revenue, obviously, and then that will enable us to get some invest in the infrastructure, proper housing, because that was one of the things that was in the 10-year plan, was affordable housing. It's really expensive to live in Conshohocken. So those are some of the things that I was thinking, but I guess, I think it's important that we really do need to embrace the sustainability. That waterfront is just a gem, and it's a shame that it's not developed. So lots of ideas. I've done, so related to, in my profession, I went into global real estate where we did master planning. Master planning is equivalent to the 10-year plan. The other thing that we have to do that everyone struggles with is what we call change management. So, hey, we're building a new hotel. How do we communicate that to the community without them going crazy? And so that's an important skill to have.
Time's up.
That's a code red.
A.
So I think I maybe headed off a couple questions there, but if not, you guys can ping me.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question?
Have you had the opportunity to attend any planning meetings to see how they're run and
I have. Thank you. That's a great question. When I sat on the Planning Commission, they asked great questions. And that was something I found interesting. Actually, I was talking to Brittany earlier today, and I noticed that the zoning board goes first and then planning, and I was wondering why we have a serial review as opposed to a parallel review. And then in the last meeting, I didn't go to the last meeting, but I read the notes, and I was at the meeting. I see some people here from the previous meeting when we were talking about the apartments being developed on Washington Street. But I noticed that we have, in the 10-year plan, we're talking about density, yet there's a variance for the 33 people per acre, and we granted that variance. Sightlines, down on the corner there, I'm referring to the new condominiums or townhouses at the end of Poplar where Pitt. That's the bike trail, that's vehicular traffic, there's pedestrian traffic. There's a variance to reduce the sightlines. Why would we do that? Because I sent Tina a note. I sent you an email about people parking where it says no parking from here to corner, and there's school buses there. And so why would we reduce the sightlines? That's going to create a hazard. So I question. Those are the types of things that I question. I don't understand why they did that. I'm seeking to understand why that would happen. And then I think that, for example, that one, I think that building is too big for that spot. We probably should reduce the footprint on that. It's a good plan. It's really cool what they're going to do, but we should do it in a responsible manner. Those were the other one I thought was odd was the not doing additional surveying. The reason it was that it was too congested. All the more reason to do a survey. If something is congested, you want to do additional survey because you don't want to find out something where you hit a gas line or an electrical line that you don't know about. So I don't understand why that happened, and I thought that a serial review of these would work better between zoning and planning, for example. And I've done submissions in other townships, and that's how it's done. So yes, I have participated. I have reviewed the agendas and the packets. And I remember you guys, because that's Dan McCardle's twin there. You were I thought that was you. Did you present at a meeting a couple? Yes. So, things like when they used the alley, I think they used the Dutch word for it. I checked up on that, and you guys used it incorrectly. But because the other thing I have with my company is I have the global presence to check with what other people are doing. And something else that you made me just think of is we should benchmark, and I noticed it wasn't in the 10-year plan. We can benchmark against Austin. Austin, Texas is a river town, and there's things that we can do to follow those models and really make this an exciting place to live. And I guess at the end of the day, it's just let's get on that list of the 10 best places to live in the country. So, all right, I talked too much, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming in this evening.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person for interview is David Swidkowski for the Planning Commission. Good evening, David.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me tonight. It's a great pleasure and a great honor. I think I've met some of you before, but not all of you, but it's great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So, David, why would you like to be on the Planning Commission?
I was thinking about this a little bit, and it boils down to a combination of stewardship and Conshohocken just being in my blood. My entire family, both sides, grew up here for many generations, and feeling like now being a first-time homeowner in Conshohocken, I just purchased my great-aunt's house on West 10th Avenue, who passed away last year, wanting to give back for the town that gave so much to my family over the years. Mom and Dad fell in love here. Grandparents, great-grandparents came over from Poland. Also, my grandfather running a plumbing business here for more than 50 years, still doing plumbing jobs even at the age of 88 today, amazingly. My great-uncle having served as zoning officer in Conshohocken for many years. So just kind of taking that step and really giving back and making my mark in the community that I love so much. I took a few strides in doing that already, actually. I serve, I think many of you who know me know I bleed St. Mary's as well, I serve as Executive Director of St. Mary Polish American Society, which is a nonprofit organization that we founded, myself and a few other former St. Mary's parishioners, back in 2015 after the parish closed and merged, and through a lot of prayer, a lot of fundraising events, and some little divine support, we were able to help keep St. Mary's open, and it was actually able to reopen as a fully functional parish a few years ago, as I'm sure many of you know. So that was a really deep, meaningful experience for me, giving back to Conshohocken in that way. Then, as part of my educational background, I have a master's degree in city and regional planning from Temple University, and my final master's project, Stephanie, I'm sure you remember we did the parking study a few years ago, so I can actually say I walked every single street and alley in the borough, counted cars, counted parking spaces, measured the length of the street, so I think I know town inside and out.
More than most of us, I'm sure.
That was a fun experience. I really enjoyed that. It was in the winter as well.
David, I have a question for you. You spent some time interning with the Montgomery County Planning Commission?
Yes.
A few years ago. What can you take from that and apply it to the Planning Commission? What do you
Right.
think?
Probably my big interest through my planning education and while I was working with the County Planning Commission was economic development. That's sort of my I don't want to say specialty, but what my greatest passion is, to really revitalizing historic main streets, historic preservation, being sure that the existing building stock is utilized to the fullest potential it can be, really promoting being able to shop with local businesses, and also living and working in the same communities as well, just giving people that option to be able to do everything in that same hometown.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Anyone else on council have a question?
No, I think he answered everything.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you
very
for coming
much.
in this evening, and thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is land use matters, public hearings, and ordinances, and I will turn this over to Mr. Peters this evening.
Thank you, President Leonard. There are two items for consideration this evening. The first is a term sheet for purchase of the following properties: 05-00-0311 or 03-100-00-9, 05001811828002, 05000488-0-00-2, and 05-00-021000-00-1. The term sheet provides for a purchase price for all four properties in the amount of $600,000, for closing costs to be split equally by the seller and the buyer, for the sale to have no mortgage associated with it, for the borough to have a due diligence period of 30 days from the date of execution of a written agreement of sale, for any park established on the property by the borough to be named after Raymond Weinman Sr., for the terms of the offer to be approved by council at a public meeting, which is this meeting, and ultimately to be memorialized in an agreement of sale mutually agreeable to both parties. The properties must be sold free and clear of all liens, mortgages, and other debt and encumbrances and restrictions except those acceptable to the borough. The sale shall occur in compliance with all requirements of the purchase of real property by a borough organized under the Borough Code. Those are the provisions of the term sheet. The term sheet has been signed by a representative of the owner of the properties. It is the same owner for all four. So this evening, if you're inclined, it would be a motion to approve the term sheet, and then Ms. Checco and I will move forward with the process of preparing a written agreement of sale and moving it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Is there anyone this evening with any public comment on this item?
Excuse me, President Leonard, I have a question, if that's okay.
Yes.
Can we clarify what the funding source will be utilized to acquire these four parcels of property that are owned by the Wyman Estate?
Yes, we will be utilizing capital reserve funds, so you have a fund specified as capital reserves, and the $600,000 will be taken out of that account and utilized for the purchase of those properties.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So the motion would be to approve the term sheet for purchase of tax map parcel numbers 0-05-00-031, 00-00-9.
See, it's harder than it looks, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Mr. Peters.
Yeah.
05-00-11828-00-2, 05-00-04880-00-2, 05-00-02100-00-1, and authorize expenditures of funds for title report for the same. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. I think I survived, right?
You did very well, thank you. The next item is consider approving a First Amendment to the settlement agreement for 401 to 433 Washington Street. At your last Borough Council meeting, representatives from KRE were here to discuss with you their vision for that property and the changes to be made from the initial settlement agreement. That settlement agreement was made several years ago, and in working with the borough, there have been changes made both to make it more accessible to the public and also to make it safer from an emergency management standpoint. So the First Amendment to the settlement agreement, its primary terms are as follows. The plan as referred to in the settlement agreement would now reference the new plan and the architectural renderings that you saw on February 2nd. The public amenities to be provided as part of that plan will be those shown to you on February 2nd. And as discussed at that time, those improvements have been changed to be more appropriate for the flood conditions in that area. The First Amendment provides that KRE has agreed to comply with the borough's floodplain regulations, and this agreement requires them to do so. KRE has agreed to comply with the new review letters that have been issued by your staff and professionals. They've agreed to provide public easements down to the river, including the living street that we spent some time discussing at the meeting. They are providing a contribution for an updated global traffic study in the amount of $10,000 and are providing a $300,000 contribution for implementation of improvements identified under that study. They are providing a contribution of $10,000 for a swift water rescue vehicle. They are providing for the following improvements that they've negotiated with your emergency management team. Those are to place mechanicals and utilities above flood stage to the extent permitted by the utility company, to provide for storage areas for fit-out gear within the buildings, to provide for Knox boxes at higher elevations, to provide anchor points for emergency votes on the buildings, to improve and enhance the lighting for the borough's emergency boat dock at the end of Cherry Street, to provide an exterior staircase to the first floor above flood stage for Building 3, to provide appropriate signage for evacuation and other emergency situations, and they've agreed to continue to work with your emergency management in implementing those improvements. Those are the primary terms of the settlement agreement as amended. Everything else is legal in terms of us actually submitting it to the court to have it amended and all the formalities. And we have reviewed this extensively with KRE and their counsel, as well as Spectrum, the current owner, and it is acceptable to all. If you're inclined this evening to approve it, it would be subject to your borough manager and I finalizing the agreement. There are some things, for example, plan dates that we still need to add into here, but we can handle all of that administratively.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Is there anyone this evening with public comment on this agenda item? Okay. So the motion I'm seeking from council is to approve the First Amendment to the settlement agreement for 401, 433 Washington Street, subject to final review and approval of the borough manager and solicitor.
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'm going to read both of them and then ask for separate motions. The first item is approve and adopt the January 3rd reorganization meeting minutes and January 19th regular meeting minutes. The second item is approve the January ending treasurer's report and accounts payable. So the first motion for council this evening is motion to approve and adopt the January 3rd reorganization meeting minutes and the January 19th regular meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is, the motion I am seeking is to approve the January ending treasurer's report and accounts payable in the amount of $483,647.95.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is under new business, and I will turn that over to Ms. Checo.
Thank you, President Leonard. The first two items are escrow releases. Both these projects are complete, so we are closing out the remaining escrows for professional services. The first item is 538 Spring Mill Avenue in the amount of $1,401.08.
Is there anyone with public comment for this agenda item this evening? So the motion would be to approve 538 Spring Mill Avenue Professional Services escrow release in the amount of $1,401.08.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
The next escrow is for 385 East Hector Street in the amount of $794.16.
Thank you, Ms. Checo. Is there anyone for public comment on this agenda item this evening? So the motion we are seeking from council is to approve 385 East Hector Street Professional Services escrow release in the amount of $794.16.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is voting delegates for the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs Conference. This is an annual conference. Both Anita Barton and Adrian Cerna will be representing the borough at this conference for the 2022 fiscal year. The motion would be to appoint Anita as the voting delegate and Adrian as the alternate voting delegate, if so inclined.
And do we have any public comment on this item this evening? So we'll be seeking a motion from council.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
As everyone remembers, Marissa Buck was instrumental in the success of the Dog Park Committee. She is now switching gears, and she'd like to focus her efforts on fundraising specifically for the dog park through the Friends of Conshohocken Parks. She has applied for and been appointed by the Friends of Conshohocken Parks Board, which is a nonprofit entity. The bylaws of the nonprofit require council authorization, so for tonight, it's to ratify the appointment of Marissa Buck to the Friends of Conshohocken Parks, if so inclined.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Is there anyone for public comment on this item? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda under unfinished business is consider reappointment on applicant to the Marywood Park Commission. Is there anyone who has a public comment on this item this evening?
And the applicant is Jimmy Lynch, and he appeared at the previous meeting and interviewed for reappointment.
No public comment on, we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is consider appointment an applicant to the Sewer Authority Board.
And that applicant is Mr. George Bass, and he interviewed at the February work session for appointment to the Sewer Authority.
And do we have any public comment this evening? So I would be seeking the motion to appoint George Bass to the Sewer Authority.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next item I'm going to send over to Mr. Peters.
Thank you, President Leonard. So at your last meeting, we discussed an amendment to your business privilege tax regulations that's done by resolution, and the goal is to continue to attract successful businesses to the borough to take up any office space that may open up. And here is how that benefit would work. So if a business comes into the borough and pays $1 million in earned income tax or more, they are entitled to a rebate on their business privilege tax in an amount equal to 50% of the amount over $1 million of EIT paid. So for example, if someone pays $1.5 million in EIT, you subtract out the $1 million, $500,000 in potential benefits multiplied by 50%, which would result in a benefit of $250,000. The resolution provides that the maximum rebate in any given year is $200,000. So in that scenario, it would be limited to $200,000 a year. It's also limited to a maximum of 5 consecutive years. There's no entitlement to the rebate outside of those 5 consecutive years, and that would result in a maximum potential benefit across 5 years of $1 million. That is the resolution as proposed, and we did discuss it at length at your last meeting as well.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Is there anyone for public comment on this particular agenda item this evening? So the motion from council would be to approve Resolution 2022-05, amending the borough's business privilege tax and mercantile tax regulations. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is public comment, which we will start this evening, actually, with Mayor Aronson.
Thank you, President Leonard.
You're welcome.
First item is the Kiwanis Club of Conshohocken is having their annual Mardi Gras fundraiser on March 1st. Tickets are $25, and proceeds help to support the charitable work that the club does all year. You can get tickets by asking a member or by visiting Kiwanis Club of Conshohocken on Facebook or Instagram. You can also see my social media for more details, and we hope to see you there. Tomorrow, right here in Borough Hall, our fire department and emergency services will be giving out fire detectors to residents. There will also be an opportunity to register for our Code Red emergency messaging service. If anyone watching or listening is not able to get here physically, please call 484-243-6069, and our team can arrange for delivery to your home. And finally, the mayors of West Conshohocken and Bridgeport challenged Conshohocken to a pizza contest. I've been collecting votes from residents for the past week, and I'll be bringing the winning pizza to the contest. We hope to hold this very important competition sometime in March, and are excited to highlight the great small businesses in all 3 of our boroughs. That's it for me. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor Aronson. Ms. Allen?
I have nothing tonight. Thank you, President Leonard.
Thank you. Ms. Barton?
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing.
Ms. Sokoloski?
Sure. So next Tuesday, the borough is sponsoring an autism awareness and education session at 6 p.m. You'll see that on the borough website to register. So I'd encourage anybody to register who's interested in that education and training.
Thank you, Tina.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone this evening for a public comment? Can you come up and state your name and address, please?
Yes, good evening. Richard Kosich, 227 East Hector Street. I'm actually here in my official capacity as the chair of the Conshohocken Republican Committee. And we had a meeting last Wednesday, and during that committee meeting, we took a vote and decided that we were going to issue a statement regarding the situation with the eminent domain issue at the outbound station in the 2nd Ward. And I'm here, I'd like to be able to read that statement to you now and also to submit it into the record, if that would be acceptable. It's a little over 2 minutes, so if you can accommodate me for like an extra 30 seconds, I'd really appreciate it. So if there's no objections, I'll just go ahead and read the statement. So the Conshohocken Republican Committee would like to officially voice its opinion regarding Borough Council's ordinance involving eminent domain of the property at 2 Harry Street, also known as the outbound station. Although this ordinance has been dropped from tonight's agenda, we are still concerned that Borough Council will proceed with eminent domain of the outbound station at a later date. We feel this would be an egregious mistake, with numerous mitigating circumstances arguing against it. To begin with, the current owner, Joe and Barbara Collins, are lifelong residents of Conshohocken and have owned the parcel of land for 44 years. So they are entitled to some due process and need to be treated with respect, especially when it comes to confiscating their land via eminent domain. It has also been reported that the borough is proposing turning the outbound station into a museum, which is highly ironic given that the Conshohocken Historical Society is already housed at East 5th Avenue at Marywood Park House. So purchasing additional property for another museum would be a wasteful enterprise, assuming the supposition is true. Furthermore, turning the outbound station into a museum or some other vague assertion of a potential public purpose not only fails to adequately state the specific purpose for this property as required by Pennsylvania law, but also doesn't satisfy the implied intent per the original ordinance now tabled. There's also an economic factor to consider. The Couch Tomato has already signed an 18-year lease for the outbound station, which they plan will help expand their business into our community. The owners reportedly thought so highly of the building and the community surrounding it that the Collins felt confident in entering into this agreement with them. They will undoubtedly maintain the building well, keeping in mind its historical status. The Couch Tomato is also an excellent restaurant, if none of you have tried it or already been there, and they would represent another great culinary choice for Conshohocken residents and its visitors to enjoy throughout the year. Based upon these mitigating factors, we strongly support the Collins plan, an alternative plan for the outbound station and surrounding land, which Joe and Barbara released last Saturday, February 12th. Per this plan, we respectfully urge Borough Council to, 1, stop any further notion of eminent domain of the outbound station, and 2, purchase the properties around the outbound station for sale at a realistic negotiated price. And if I'm not mistaken, it sounds like tonight you made that first motion to step to do that, so I'm very happy to hear that. Obviously, these parcels of land would be used as a new green area for public purposes. I assume that's what the intent is, since there's very little open land left in that area. Additionally, we urge Borough Council to consider purchasing the undeveloped plot of land for sale by the same owner at 127 East Elm Street and utilizing it as a public green space as well. Otherwise, it will most likely be bought and paved over into another asphalt parking lot, which we don't need. Once acquired, we trust Borough Council will not turn around and resell these parcels to the higher bidder, regardless of the intended use. Thank you very much for your time. It's greatly appreciated.
You can get, Brittany will hold out. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment this evening? Okay. Meeting adjourned.